gene which is fixed in past, because when Ambassador Prabhu Dayal was with me a couple of hours ago, he said that the premise of the Iranian revolution is based on hatred towards Israel, which they call Little Satan, and America, which is called the Big Satan. I think something dramatic is going to take place. My only worry is that when dramatic takes place in international politics, then there are things which happen which is beyond people's control. When de-Baathification in Iraq took place, Daesh was born, ISIS was born in the prisons of Abu Ghraib, and this is what something America could never fathom. So it's a big thing. We are joined by Aditya Rajkol, our senior executive
That's
editor,
right. That's
internal
right. Aditya is
security.
also with us.
Welcome,
So is
Aditya.
Ambassador Deepak Vora, former Indian diplomat. Aditya, let me quickly come to you. Help the viewers understand more about Basharat al-Fath, this new operation that's been launched by Iran.
Well, yes, we can now confirm that four countries are facing this kind of an attack right now. There are four US bases in Iraq, Bahrain, Qatar, and Kuwait that have come under attack. Many of these ballistic missiles have been neutralized and intercepted, but I'm getting information that at least three explosions have hit, the Al Udeid base in Qatar, the US base in Qatar. We do not know if there are any casualties. We also do not know whether there is any kind of infrastructure damage that has happened. There were also reports over the last 2 weeks that US was trying to evacuate its members, its troops, and also its 40 military aircrafts from the Al Udeid base in Qatar. Apart from that, there are multiple US bases, just like Karthikeya was pointing out, all across the Middle East, from Saudi Arabia to Turkey to Iraq to many other countries, and all of them are on high alert right now. There are sirens that are going off. They are, undertaking standard operating procedures. The air defenses in all these countries are very much active. There are at least two countries, Qatar and UAE, that seem to have shut their airspaces right now. This is only beginning of this kind of a major attack, a major escalation that has happened. I also want to point out what Karthikeya was saying, that this is a major escalation. This is also perhaps the beginning of a major change that could happen in the Middle East. Are we looking at a new Middle East? Because let's remember that both Israel and United States haven't ruled out the possibility of a political change actually happening in Iran itself. Could the end goal be either to eliminate or extract Khamenei? And if that really happens, then what will be the future of Iran? Because at this moment, there isn't a kind of a public opposition leader who has the massive support on ground who can take over. So, will this be a complete chaos out there? Because let's also remember that earlier in the day, a very important prison was attacked. There were a lot of members in that
Right.
prison that have perhaps left injured or dead. Many have escaped as well. And there are political opposition of Iran, many Westerners who are lodged in that particular prison. So, very in a very methodological way, these attacks have been planned both by the US as well as Israel. And let's also see this in the context of a major escalation where the US has not only been monitoring this, but has been left embarrassed with Donald Trump running to the Situation Room. It's not one US base that has come under attack. There are at least four, and who knows, through the night, there could be possibly more attacks that will be happening against the United States. So Donald Trump, who has completed 5 months in office, who wanted to resolve the Russia Ukraine crisis, has now engulfed the entire world into a major military confrontation, at least in the Middle East. While one stage of war between Russia and Ukraine is not over, there is another that has escalated to the level that it has engulfed the entire Middle East.
No, you're absolutely right. We're getting another statement from Qatar's defense ministry that says it's ready to deal with any kind of danger. And that's the bigger question. In the run-up to the B-2 bombings, people were asking who's actually with Iran from the Islamic nations. And Ambassador Deepak Vora, I think I last spoke to you on Friday, and we discussed who's actually with Iran. You had said nobody is actually with Iran. But with this latest attack on the Al Udeid Air Base and several other advisories that have now been sent across to UAE, to Kuwait, to Djibouti, all those US personnel, US Army personnel, they are already on alert. Donald Trump and Iran, they've sort of forced the West Asian players to now pick a side, haven't they?
Well, thank you very much, sir. Always a delight to be on your channel and learn so much from you. I've just heard this term civilizational state. I have no idea what that means and how that adds or detracts from Iran's whatever strength it has at the moment. These are all terms we come across, but I don't know what they. After 52 years in diplomacy, I'm happy to be told which are non-civilizational states and which are civilizational states. The other issue that I'm looking at right now, having served in that region for 20 years, Iran seems to be on what we call in diplomacy its terminal defiance. As you're going down, I want to take as many people as I can with me. And the fact that they have hit American air bases in Qatar and some other places, I believe that this could be a reason for Article 5 of that little racket called NATO, Article 5 of its treaty to kick in. Because you remember, sir, Article 5 says if one NATO member is attacked, then everybody is attacked. The other way around is not true. If a NATO member attacks a non NATO member, Article 5 does not kick in over there. Now, Iran actually is, we're talking about is plunging the world into crisis. Let me assure you, my friends in Latin America or in Africa couldn't care less about what is happening. So the world getting into crisis is hyperbole, which I use it all the time, but it doesn't really mean very much. What I see happening, Iran's isolation is complete. And what it is doing with the Sunni Arab states in the region, a region from which it is quite far, it's located, although we talk about Iran being in the Middle East, it's 1,500 kilometers away from Israel. So I really don't know what they are trying to do, except
Okay.
that they seem to be on suicide mode at the moment. Because if NATO gets involved, it's happy birthday, Iran.
NATO's already come out in, they had a gathering, they had a huddle in The Hague, and they've decided that the attacks on Iran were actually legal. They were not in violation of international law. And what's more is that they've already decided to increase their GDP spending to 5%. That's the decision that was taken in The Hague today. General Kochhar also with us on the broadcast. Karthik, I'm going to come to you in just a quick bit. Let's bring in General Kochhar here. General Kochhar, Ambassador Vora talking about that hyperbole. Is it really hyperbole? Karthik was, talking about the Hormuz Strait that might be, that critical oil choke point, 20% of the global oil crossing through that particular strait. Global crisis, is it a global crisis, or are we barking up the wrong tree here? General Kochhar.
See, if you analyze Karthikeyan is not wrong. He is absolutely correct because this is one of the world's busiest routes and it does impact the world trade. But the point is that how long, in case Iran decides to block it, because it has the capability of doing that. It has got mines, and it's not a very broad kind of route, as mentioned. Is at the most 3 kilometers. It can choke it. As a matter of fact, one of its vessels also, if it blocks it with one of the your vessels, it can block this entire route. The point is that for how long? You see, it cannot be a permanent kind of a thing, because the way Iran is fighting this battle, it is fighting the battle through its stockpile of missiles, and those are not uh, uh, infinite. He has a finite number. He has a capability of firing n number of missiles every day. His missile launches have been reduced in numbers. So his capability to strike 80, 100 missiles in a day is not there. And one important aspect I want to bring out in this discussion is that only 10 missiles have been reportedly, I think it has been mentioned in a program itself, that only 10 missiles have been fired by Iran on Qatar. And with that air defense also available in Qatar, how many would have gone in? At the most, one or two or three missiles, and how much of damage it would have been caused. So I
We've got another
think,
statement, General Kochhar. We've got another statement
Kabir.
coming in from, Iran's Supreme National
Kabir.
Security Council, who said in a statement, this is important for all the panelists here, they said in that statement that operation against US forces in Qatar's Al Udeid base was successful, and that the number of missiles used equaled the number of bombs the US employed in its attack on Iranian nuclear facilities. We're also learning of US aircraft that's taken off from Saudi Arabia Air Base. Over to you, Karthike. These developments, the latest
Kabir,
ones
you
in this
are
case.
the host of the show. I'm putting it on your plate. You are the host of the show. Kabir, what I'm trying to put on the plate is, and Aditya, I would like you to respond first. when the war takes place, it becomes a war of narrative. Like in Operation Sindoor, it became a war of narrative after the operation took over. In this war, there's an Iranian perspective, there is an Israeli perspective, there's an American perspective, there's a Saudi Arabian perspective. If you recall the interview given by Mohammed bin Salman 1 year ago, he said, if Iran has a bomb, we will go for the bomb.
Yep.
Aditya, what is the Indian perspective?
Well, the Indian perspective is very simple that we look at our national interest first. And we are not the provocators of war in any kind of a situation, either here or anywhere across the globe. What we really want is de escalation. What we really want is diplomacy and dialogue to pave the way forward. But it doesn't seem that anybody seems to be interested at this stage. It's similar to how US intervened here and wanted some kind of a dialogue to take place between India and Pakistan. Similarly, you had the Iranian president speaking to Prime Minister Modi, where he said that India can play a great role in this entire exercise, and India is playing that role. You would remember, Kartike, that earlier in the day, when the Russian president met the Iranian foreign minister, he said that the global south can play a significant role in the peace exercise, and perhaps he was hinting towards New Delhi and New Delhi's increasing role in having a dialogue with multiple stakeholders in any kind of a conflict situation. Look at Russia, Ukraine. Look at Israel, Palestine, or in this case, Israel and Iran. We have communication lines open with Tehran, with Tel Aviv, with Washington D.C., with the other stakeholders. But at this moment, as you correctly pointed out, Kartike, it's battle down on ground, but it's also the war of narratives. A lot has been said about Iran, a lot has been said about Khamenei, which is right, that there's a radicalized society. What will happen if there is a regime change operation that really takes place? But the question is also that US has been, left with embarrassment across the Middle East. Look at the scale of what happened. Three nuclear sites were attacked initially, and now at least four US bases in four different countries of the Middle East have been attacked. How will US respond? There have been statements coming in from the White
Aditya,
House.
when you were breaking the
Yes,
news on News 9, Aditya, when you were
yes.
breaking the news on News 9, I was reading an invitee article of Shifting Views and Misdirection, how Trump decided to strike Iran, written by Mark Mazzetti. Mark Mazzetti is a Pulitzer Prize winner author. Jonathan Swan, Maggie Haberman, Eric Schmidt, and Helen Cooper. And they said that despite Trump had made his mind to attack Iran, he was giving complete different opinion on TV and saying that he's not interested. So my point my the larger issue which I want to you want to respond and then to the ambassador is, has America thought of post Khamenei Iran, and is it correct that Ayatollah Khomeini's grandson is in the race to take over in case Khamenei is bumped off? That's what Reuters have reported. And let's be very frank, I'm quoting my sources because that's what is coming on the international feed. And Reuters is reporting that he has not made Mustada. Aditya.
Well,
And then to
certainly.
you,
Well,
Ambassador. Sir.
certainly. Well, certainly he's a strong contender. But in case there is a regime change that really happens, will the US or will Israel really allow him to take over? Is the whole question. Let's remember that Khamenei hasn't really come out in open, even hasn't been tweeting over the last 24 to 48 hours. He's strangely in a bunker without any kind of a communication line, even with his IRGC generals at this particular stage. So you can imagine the kind of fear that there is and the kind of attacks that have happened today, not just in that prison, but also the Ministry of Energy or other important locations, clearly indicate that there is far worse that is yet to be seen in Tehran and other locations. And with this particular attack that has happened tonight, I would shudder to think what would happen in the next 24 hours when US actually launches attacks not just at the nuclear sites, but perhaps at strategic infrastructure locations or ballistic missiles, etc., that could be in the civilian localities and civilian districts of Iran.
Ambassador, to you. I want you to respond on this, sir.
Well, yes, thank you very much. I've just heard General Saab saying blocking the Straits of Hormuz. It has never been blocked in the last 20,000 years. During the Iran-Iraq conflict also, there was lots of talk Saddam is going to block it, nothing ever happened. How do you block the Straits? You don't sink a fishing boat over there and it's blocked. The channel you have to block by sinking mines into it. Oh, no, 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 no. Iran is not going to do that. It's going to hurt Iran's exports and imports more than it's going to hurt anybody else. Unless Iran is on death wish, I really don't understand what blocking the Straits of Hormuz means. It's not going to happen. Second issue, sir, that you very rightly pointed out dialogue and diplomacy. After, what will happen, sir? All right, you are Israel, General Saab is Iran. I'm the mediator, I'm the dialogue initiator. We sit in a room. Israel says, I want to exist. Iran says, you can't exist. What do I do, sir? As a mediator, what will I say? What dialogue and diplomacy? When the attitudes are hardened, the attitudes are very clear, what do I do, sir? We've tried this with Ukraine and Russia. Who's mediated? Who has been successful in mediating between everybody? That joker, I beg your pardon, that gentleman sitting in the United Nations who only knows two words: maximum restraint. Today, of course, he's come out with some other kind of statement. The world is going into this. The world is poor chap. He's about to lose his job, so he comes out with all this hyperbole and these impressive statements which somebody writes for him. The reality, the hard reality, sir, and I've served in that area. By the way, by way of what should I say? By disclaimer, may I mention that in my extended family in the US, we have a Jewish daughter in law. She calls me dad. Does she have the right to exist? Ask the Iranians. And therefore, you can understand how I feel about this kind of nonsense. Sir,
No, no,
let me put it to you like this. Now it's going to be a war involving more than just the US, Israel, and Iran. If NATO forces kick in, it's not a world war. Please don't, 30 nations fought in First World War, 55 in the Second World War. But that's because we were colonies, etc. We also fought that. My late father fought in the Second World War to protect the British Empire. That's a different issue altogether. Now, let me assure you, it's going to be limited to this region because nobody is interested in what happens to Iran or what happens to anybody else. They're all going to just hope that oil doesn't go through the roof, food prices don't go through the roof. And they will not, sir. The Americans don't care. They are the world's
so,
largest oil producers.
so you said
But if the
something very
Saudis and
close to my
others get
heart.
hurt, they
On News 9, we do not use the word world war. In News 9, we do not use the word nuclear war. And on News 9, we do not use the word Parmanu Yuddha ho jayega. I understand the
that's the way
importance
it
of
should be.
these words, and Aditya is a senior executive editor here. We don't use these words. We don't want to desensitize the Indian population, Indian public. कि यहाँ तो परमाणु युद्ध हो जाएगा. We don't do that sort of journalism. Kabir, you are breaking this on the channel, and I would reiterate, and you take this issue with Aditya, that Iran coordinated the attacks on the American
That's
airbase,
right.
the Qatari officials, and gave advance notice that attacks were coming to minimize casualties.
But
So,
this is again coming from the Iranian officials, Kartike, and we're also learning of a Qatari, minister's statement saying that all the missiles were intercepted successfully. We've thwarted all the attacks coming from the other side. Iran, on the other hand, has launched a separate video saying at least 3 of our missiles did in fact strike Al Udeid. And the bigger question is,
dena padega. Anyone who has done international diplomacy would understand. Aditya, isn't that you have to give that exit route?
but in the larger
You know,
picture, Aditya, also you're pitting one Muslim nation is pitted against the other Muslim nation on a
But
day when the Ministry
Kabir,
of External Affairs.
I would like to, Kabir, I think I would like to make a point. It's not about one Muslim nation. Sorry, I disagree with you. You are the host of the show. It is not about one Muslim nation against another Muslim nation. It is about a Shia state against a Sunni state. And I think, Asim Munir should carefully look at it. Aditya.
Absolutely.
well, Asim Munir would be thinking what's happening all across right now because just 2 days back he was enjoying a dinner or a lunch with Donald Trump and nominating him for the Nobel Peace Prize. And within days or within hours now, situation seems to have taken a 180-degree turn. But at this moment, Kartike, many years ago, many decades ago, there was a prime minister or perhaps a chief minister of Kashmir, Jammu and Kashmir. He was asked how many people are with you, what kind of a support do you have? He said the entire population of Kashmir. So he said, what about your opposition? He said entire population of Kashmir is with him as well. So that is the mentality out here that the UAE and the Saudi Arabia of the world do not want to enter the conflict. So once the Israelis attack, they will condemn, they will use very harsh words. But when the Iranians attack, their air defense and ballistic, air defense will go on air to support Israel in many ways. So there, one needs to understand that there is a tacit understanding right now between UAE, Saudi, even Egypt, Jordan, and many other countries and Israel. I would in fact go to the extent of saying that while UAE and Israel have had a normalization, day isn't far when the Saudi and Israel normalization will also happen. The only hindrance came when the 7th October massacre and the terror attack happened. So, as of now, advance warning does come up. When the India-Pakistan confrontation happened and the ceasefire was achieved, many even speculated that did, Pakistan inform India? Did Pakistan inform perhaps US or some of their Middle Eastern partners? I'm not sure if that happened at that particular time, but yes, there have been advance warnings that went out earlier in the day to US, to Qatar, and that's why the kind of emergency security warnings that went out from the US embassy and the UK embassy, and shortly after we had the airspace closure as well. But is this kind of a balancing act that's happening, or is this kind of a face saving that is given to Iran? Or will we see a wider confrontation in the coming hours and weeks? US certainly, as we speak about the narrative, US is facing embarrassment. There is a kind of wider discussion amongst the foreign policy wonks that how is Iran able to pose such a challenge to the might of the United States, to the country that actually, was continuously telling the world that this is how democracy will function. So the reality of the matter is that there is imminent US response that is expected in the next 24 hours. I would, in fact, go to the extent of saying that within the even before we in India
Israeli
see
media at
dawn,
this point in
there
time,
could be a
my
US
apologies for
response.
interjecting. Israeli media says the US fighter jets have taken off from Saudi Arabia Air Base and head towards
There you
Iran.
have it.
So you have this information that's already coming in.
Absolutely. So there you have it. There could be possibly an immediate response. I'm sure many of my panelists are much more senior with much more experience. Ambassador Vora can perhaps butt in and uh, you know reflect more on what kind of a US response could we expect in the next few hours.
Absolutely. Ambassador Vora, throw some light on US retaliation that's coming their way. We are constantly saying that this is an embarrassing situation for Donald Trump and the Republican administration in West Asia. Is that the reason for these hasty steps? Aditya said 24 hours and then said maybe the next couple of hours, and aircrafts already scrambled from the Saudi Arabia Air Base.
Earlier it was, I'll decide in 2 weeks. He took action in 2 days. We call this strategic deception. I'm sure he has a copy of Chanakya on his bedside table and he reads that. You say one thing and you do something which is quite the opposite. But your colleague who's just been speaking is absolutely brilliant. I think all of you are. You put it across so beautifully. Reality sometimes is at variance with what we expect, what we want. What does Iran want? What does Israel want? What does America want? And now the retaliation that will come from America will be, I tend to agree with Donald Trump, it will be something that Iran will be shaken, sir. Will regime change come? Yes. Will the new regime say, I don't want to build the bomb? Yes. Will the world then hug and kiss the Iranians and say, we love you guys? Yes. Because none of the Arabs in the Middle East wants Iran to have a nuclear bomb. But they know that Iran is committed to throwing out their monarchical regimes, so they don't want these guys to go nuclear. That is the assessment we have after I've spent 20 years over there and continue to deal with those fellows. They'll be very happy if Iran is cut to size.
Ambassador, I have a question for you, sir. Do you think that the grandson of the Pahlavi dynasty, has been
Your voice is
speaking on
cracking.
Twitter? Does he have a chance, sir?
Hassan Khomeini. You're talking about Hassan Khomeini, Karthik. Hassan Khomeini, the grandson of
No,
Ruhollah Khomeini.
Hassan Khomeini is grandson of Ayatollah Khomeini, someone who fathered the revolution with Ali Shariati.
That's right.
I am talking about Raza Pahlavi's grandson,
Oh, all right.
someone who was deposed, and he has
Crown
been
Prince.
speaking on Twitter. Does he have a chance, sir? Ambassador Vora.
The guy, I haven't been to Iran for a couple of years, but I do. When I last went there with 80% inflation, 60% unemployment, there was a certain amount of unrest. Now, people are saying they're very nationalistic people and somebody attacks them, they all come together. I don't believe so. I think there is a substantial movement. Exactly the same thing happened when Mossadegh, you're all too young to remember, so was I was 2 years old, 1953, the Prime Minister of Iran, a very popular democratically elected Mohammad Mossadegh, thrown out, he nationalized the oil industry. The Americans and the Brits got together, did three things: bought the military, bought the intelligence. Dollars were very welcome in 1953, bought the media. We still see the thing going on, not in India, fortunately, but across the Middle East. And finally, unleashed their chaps who were trucked in from various parts of Iran to Tehran, and they started screaming, "Hi, hi, hi, hi!" Outwent the regime. I think we're seeing that happen now. How would the Israelis, whatever Mossad is, they don't have a hotline to the fellow who lives in heaven to tell them, here is this guy, here is that guy. They've bought over these chaps in Iranian intelligence. Otherwise, how is it, sir, that I'm sitting now on your panel and the missile comes and gets me, but not the guy sitting next to me? I mean, this kind of targeted assassination is amazing. But somebody is telling them, somebody is feeding them the information. So that's the first thing. Second, the media, of course, is purely on the side of Israel as far as that area is concerned. Nobody is supporting Iran. They'll make statements, etc., but nothing beyond that. And now I believe that the people will take to the streets if the Shah's son decides that now he has to unleash his chaps, whom he has been cultivating and training for some time. Then there is every reason to believe that there will be a change of regime. And hopefully the regime that will come will not pursue the nuclear option. I'm glad that your channel doesn't talk about it. Thank you very much. The world doesn't want to be frightened anymore. So good going.
Absolutely.
Keep it up.
It's a commitment.
Absolutely.
We stick to it. Aditya, before you get on with your comments, let me quickly introduce Eli Piepsh, Director, International Relations, Israel Defense and Security Forum, also with us on the broadcast here. Aditya, quickly with your thoughts, and then I'll get an opening comment from Mr. Piepsh.
Karthik made a very important point about this Shia nation being isolated completely by the Sunnis. So there's no Muslim solidarity that's being witnessed apart from the lip service that is coming out. So Karthik, on a lighter note, what Iran is doing now is basically saying, "Hum to dubenge sanam, lekin tumhe dubake." So they will go down, but they will first ensure whatever little damage they can do across these Sunni nations. They will do that, and perhaps then the regime change will happen.
Is it a self-destruct right now that Iran is looking at? Ambassador also spoke about that terminal process, terminal defiance, if I'm not wrong. That's the word Ambassador Vora used. Eli Piepsh, also with us on the broadcast. Mr. Piepsh, how are you looking at these recent developments? Just a day after that B-2 bombing, Iran has now attacked U.S. air bases, at least in 4 different locations. Al-Udeid has been confirmed in Qatar.
Yeah, I think this is the actions of a desperate regime. They know they need to show some sort of strength, but in doing so, they've actually exposed their weakness. They're shooting, they're targeting U.S. Assets that seems very clear was coordinated in advance. All the host countries understood what was happening. Yet they've also went ahead and they decided to target many Muslim Arab countries. And I think part of the message, and this is the message you'll always find with jihadis when you get to the end, is that they get more upset not at the Jews, they get upset at other Muslims that don't jump in their fight. For the last couple of days, the Iranians have been trying to get some of their proxies, Hamas and Hezbollah, to go and fight Israel, to distract Israel. And Hamas and Hezbollah, which owe their entire existence to Iran, have rejected them. When Iran sees they can't get them to go, they now lash out at Bahrain, at Iraq, at Qatar, at UAE. Ironically, I found it funny that Al Jazeera, which is funded by the Qatari government, only reported on what was happening in their own backyard from American websites. So you see the whole thing is coordinated, but anybody looking at, if there were Iranians who believed in the regime and thought they were actually strong, when you look at this really pathetic response, you must come across and understand there's nothing behind it. You look how easily all of the Qatari and all of these Arab countries were able to shoot down the Iranian missiles. No casualties, no nothing, no damage at all. I think you could see how impotent they are. And that is a message that weakness is spreading from outside of Iranian borders through its potential allies in the Middle East. The end of the regime is very near.
The escalation in the rhetoric, is it only a matter of when and not if that the Hormuz Strait is closed down? Let's come back to the Indian reality.